January 3rd, 1944. The Corsairs' engines rumbled across the Pacific airstrip as the Black Sheep Squadron returned from their brutal sweep over Rabaul. One by one, the aircraft touched down, their metal frames groaning under the strain of combat. The stifling tropical heat pressed down on the exhausted men as they climbed from their cockpits. The loss of Captain George Ashmun weighed heavily on the squadron, despite their overwhelming success. The men's boots crunched against the gravel as they made their way toward the hangar. Then came the collective pause, the moment of recognition. Their commander's aircraft never returned. Miles away, their commander, Gregory Pappy Boyington, drifted alone in the vast Pacific, his strength ebbing with each passing hour. Through the salt spray and haze, he spotted a vessel approaching. As it drew closer, his initial surge of hope transformed into dread. Flying proudly from its mast, he saw the flag of the rising sun. A pilot by any other name. Gregory Pappy Boyington's drive to become a pilot was fueled by a desire to escape his flaws: alcohol, reckless behavior, and a fiery temper. His tumultuous civilian life gave way to the Army ROTC, where he sought structure. Determined to prove himself, Boyington became a second lieutenant in 1934, starting his transformation into a legendary pilot. Eager to start flight training, Boyington applied, confident his record would guarantee his place. But as he began his application, his heart sank. The position clearly stated that married men were excluded. Disbelief washed over him. But rather than surrender, something inside him ignited. Determined to find a way, Boyington delved into his past. Raised as Gregory Hollenbeck, he had always believed his stepfather was his birth father. But his birth certificate revealed the truth. His biological father was Charles Boyington. Armed with this new knowledge, he adopted his birth name and applied to the Marine Corps as an aviation cadet. On June 13, 1935, Boyington's journey into the world of aviation took flight as he joined the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve. Within a year, by February 1936, he had earned a coveted aviation cadet appointment and started his training at Naval Air Station Pensacola. On March 11, 1937, Boyington received his wings. He quickly rose through the ranks, moving to Quantico and leaving the reserves behind to accept a second lieutenant's commission. By 1940, now a first lieutenant, Boyington had mastered carrier-based operations aboard the Lexington and Yorktown, skills that would serve him well in the years to come. However, Boyington was far from the ideal officer. At Pensacola, his temper often clashed with military life's rigid structure. Once, a heated argument with another officer ended with Boyington punching him. The outburst landed him in serious trouble, with a court-martial looming. His short-fused and rebellious nature put his career in jeopardy, overshadowing his undeniable skills as a pilot and his potential for leadership. But just as his military life seemed to crumble, an opportunity arose. Recruiters were seeking volunteer pilots for China's war effort. Boyington saw it as his chance to escape the court-martial and his own mounting troubles. On August 26, 1941, he resigned his Marine Corps commission and headed to China, determined to carve a new path. Once there, Boyington joined the first American volunteer group, called the Flying Tigers. As a flight leader, he earned a reputation for being reckless, unpredictable, and difficult to manage. His clashes with Commander Claire Chenault were infamous, with Boyington's ego and brash attitude causing friction within the ranks. Fellow pilots began to see him as a liar and a drunk, feeling his boasts about downing enemy aircraft overshadowed his actual accomplishments. Although Boyington was credited with 2 victories, he persistently claimed 6. Boyington's inflated sense of self and erratic behavior alienated him from his fellow airmen, and by 1942, he found himself increasingly isolated. In April 1942, Boyington broke his contract with the Flying Tigers and returned to the United States, his reputation in tatters. Few mourned his departure. His self-inflicted exile was marked by an air of disgrace, as his record of embellished victories and reckless behavior tainted his name. But Boyington wasn't done. The Black Shepherd returns. On September 29, 1942, Boyington returned to the Marine Corps, determined to reclaim his place in the skies. The Corps, desperate for experienced pilots, welcomed him back despite his tarnished reputation. At 31, a decade older than most of the Marines under his command, he earned the nickname Gramps, which was later shortened to Pappy. Pappy's thirst for action was undeniable, and by early 1943, he was leading Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 122 in the South Pacific, proving himself once again as a force to be reckoned with. In July 1943, Boyington was given command at Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 112, and his leadership skills quickly came to the forefront. But it was in September 1943 when he assumed command of the legendary Marine Fighter Squadron 214, the Black Sheep Squadron, that Boyington's legacy began to take shape. The squadron, a ragtag collection of outcasts and misfits, would become the proving ground for Boyington's transformation from disgraced pilot to legendary ace. In the skies above the Pacific, Boyington piloted the lethal Vought F-4U Corsair with the Black Sheep Squadron. The F-4U Corsair was a powerful carrier-based fighter with a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, capable of speeds up to 446 miles per hour. It featured 6 50 caliber machine guns and could carry up to 2,000 pounds of bombs or rockets. One of Boyington's trademarks was flying the worst-conditioned aircraft in the squadron, often choosing aircraft that others would avoid. By doing so, he set an example for his pilots, showing them that no matter how rough their aircraft appeared, they could fly with confidence. Boyington's example inspired his men, who would follow him into some of the most harrowing dogfights of the war. In the summer of 1943, as the fierce battles over the Russell Islands in New Georgia raged on, the roar of the Corsairs' engines echoed across the sky. Boyington's 50 caliber machine guns sent Japanese aircraft crashing into the sea, while Boyington darted in and out of the dangerous airspace over Bougainville, New Britain, and New Ireland. In just 32 days, he racked up 14 victories, solidifying his reputation as one of the most lethal aces in the Pacific. By December 27, 1943, Boyington had destroyed 25 enemy aircraft, bringing his count to a tie with the record of the legendary Eddie Rickenbacker. The Black Sheep Squadron, under Boyington's leadership, had become the most feared unit in the Pacific. One of Boyington's most daring missions came on October 17, 1943, when he led the Black Sheep Squadron in an attack against the Kahili Aerodrome at the southern tip of Bougainville. Boyington's plan was bold: provoke the enemy into launching a large-scale counterattack. With 24 Corsairs, he circled the field, observing 60 enemy Mitsubishi A6M aircraft parked on the tarmac. The A6M, or the Zero, was a dogfighting demon, boasting a top speed of 331 miles per hour, a range of 1,150 miles, and unmatched agility, making it a formidable adversary in the early Pacific War. The Japanese launched their aircraft, and the sky instantly ignited with the deafening roar of 7.7mm and 20mm cannon fire. Boyington banked hard, his Corsairs' machine guns roaring to life as the chaos erupted. Outnumbered 24 to 60, he and his squadron dove into the fray, tearing through the Zeros with brutal force. In their relentless assault, they shot down 20 enemy aircraft. The Black Sheep returned to base unscathed, their victory a testament to Boyington's unyielding leadership and tactical genius. Boyington's swagger and audacity set the tone for future missions. From the island of Vella La Vella, he issued a challenge. For every baseball cap sent to them by major league players during the World Series, they vowed to take down a Japanese Zero. The squadron received 20 caps, then took to the skies with fury. They shot down 20 Zeros, one for each cap, but they didn't stop there. They exceeded the challenge, destroying even more enemy aircraft, proving their skill and confidence went far beyond expectations. From POW to rebirth. On January 3, 1944, Boyington set out to lead 48 American fighters, including 4 from the Black Sheep Squadron, on a high-stakes sweep over Rabaul. The sky was clear as they approached the target at 8 a.m., but within seconds, enemy Zeros from the 204th and 253rd Koktai swarmed. The dogfight was a frenzy of bullets and engines screaming. Boyington, ever the warrior, shot down his 26th aircraft, breaking Eddie Rickenbacker's record. Amid the chaos, disaster struck. Boyington's wingman, Captain George Ashmun, was shot down, a loss that devastated the squadron. Then the unthinkable happened. Boyington, engaged in a vicious dogfight, disappeared. His aircraft vanished from sight, swallowed by the swirling chaos. His squadron, battered and bloodied, returned to base, but Boyington was nowhere to be found. No radio calls, no trace of his Corsair. For hours there was silence, a hero lost in the vastness of the Pacific. In the aftermath of the battle, Masajiro Mike Kawato, a Japanese pilot, claimed responsibility for shooting down Boyington. Kawato, desperate for the honor of taking down such a legendary figure, recounted the story repeatedly in books and public appearances, despite the lack of evidence to support his claim. Meanwhile, a desperate search and rescue mission was launched for Boyington, but despite the American effort, he was declared missing in action. Lost at sea, cold, hungry, and desperate, Boyington clung to life, fear gnawing at him. Hours later, a shadow loomed on the horizon. An enemy boat cut through the waves, leaving Boyington's head racing with a mix of fear and fragile hope. Finally, they hauled him aboard the I-181, a grim realization setting in. Aboard the enemy ship, Boyington faced an uncertain fate, alone in the hands of the Japanese. He was taken to Rabaul, a heavily fortified Japanese military base on the island of New Britain in Papua New Guinea. There, he was imprisoned by the Japanese, though his status as a POW was never recognized. For nearly 20 months, Boyington endured the brutal hardships of Japanese prison camps, starting with Rabaul and later Truk, a strategic naval base in the Caroline Islands. Then, one night, the camp erupted in chaos. It was the U.S. Navy's Operation Hailstone, a massive raid unleashed on Truk. Explosions lit up the night as bombers tore through the island's defenses, reducing the once mighty Japanese stronghold to flames. Trapped in the heart of the devastation, Boyington could only cling to survival as the world around him crumbled. He was then transferred to several camps, including Ofuna and Omori near Tokyo. During his internment, he was temporarily promoted to lieutenant colonel, a rare recognition in the hellish prison system. He spent his days with other American prisoners, including Medal of Honor recipient Richard O'Kane and Olympian Louis Samperini, forging bonds that would sustain him through the darkest days. Boyington's fate seemed sealed, but in August 1945, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan's surrender. The POW camps were suddenly opened, and Boyington was liberated. On September 12, 1945, an aircraft touched down at Naval Air Station Alameda. 21 Black Sheep pilots lined the tarmac, eyes scanning the aircraft, unsure if it was truly their commander returning. Then, as the door swung open, Pappy Boyington stepped out, alive, defying all odds. Their commander was home. He looked different, stronger, healthier, his face clear and sharp. The hardships of his captivity had forced sobriety upon him, stripping away the toll of excess and leaving behind a man more disciplined and more resilient than before. A fighter till the end. Boyington's return was nothing short of miraculous. The world celebrated his survival, and a hero's welcome awaited him in San Francisco, where a party was thrown in his honor, covered by Life magazine. At the age of 75, Boyington passed away. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, including a missing man flyby. Afterward, his friend Fred Loesch stood by his grave, noting the nearby headstone of boxing legend Joe Louis, remarking, quote, "Old Pappy wouldn't have to go far to find a good fight."